Excellent. I want to give my thanks to Rob Pickering. I've known Rob, wow, quite a few years now. He's been a immense supporter of what we've been doing at TADS with TADHack. He works with a number of organizations who focus on training of students. So I think he is the best person I know to give this introduction to AI coding. So Rob's all set up. He's got his presentation. He's got Cursor. So he's hopefully all confident that he can give a slick presentation. So what I will do is I'm really proud to have Rob here. I hope you enjoy this session. And Rob, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alan. Right, let's share my screen with some slides on it.
Cool.
Don't get dispirited if all you can see is sort of death by, well, not PowerPoint, Google Slides. Half of the slides just to set the context, but then we're just going to dive into to a bit of AI-based hacking.
Cool.
So I call this presentation AI coding tools for beginners because that's I think what Alan told me to bat on. I've kind of subtitled it "How to Have Fun at Hackathons" because this is specifically focused at building prototypes and MVPs and the kind of thing to get you going quickly. So, as a caveat, this isn't an exhaustive critique of how to do software engineering properly in an AI world.
Yep.
Nothing like that. That's not what we're aiming at. It is, however, a sort of how to get started with AI coding. If you understand basic engineering principles and you're looking for some superpowers or looking for some acceleration. So very much aimed at folks for who this is entirely new. So, if you know everything there is to know about AI coding, you've been vibe coding for 2 years since those early days when it was really inefficient and hard, then my complete apologies. You're probably going to learn nothing at all here, apart from how bad I can be at holding a thought and going through a logical demo that I've literally, we're going to vibe this demo when we get into Cursor. There's nothing pre-prepped at all apart from an initial problem statement with a couple of API keys buried in it. The whole thing we're going to build from scratch. So
Perfect.
let's crack on. My own background is in doing kind of early development, particularly hackathons. Love doing hackathons. And if we get to the end of this and I'm still umming and ahhing, sort of Alan will be able to give it a bit of background of some of the stuff we've done
Oh,
on
yes.
Hack, which has been quite fun.
Oh, yeah.
So, as I say, I've sort of been developing with AI coding environments really. I guess we all have forever, right? Because any kind of, unless you do, and yes, unless you're that one guy that has always done his coding in Notepad or VI or something, mostly IDEs that we've all been using for like a decade.
Yeah.
Have had some kind of inline code completion with some level of smarts in there, whether that's just algorithmic from kind of looking at what's going on inside the code base and offering smart auto completion of functions or whatever, right? So we've all kind of had some experience of this kind of assist, if you like, code assist. Obviously, with large language models and their ability to do generative stuff, then that really has moved on. So the level of kind of generation that's going on there and the sophistication of it has increased, but also the level of hallucination. So now you can have autocomplete that bears absolutely no relationship to what you were trying to do and generates absolutely crazy stuff for you. But kind of autocomplete is that kind of base layer of AI generated coding or AI assisted coding. And that's where we kind of came from. But really, for the last year or so, 18 months or so, chat has been the main interface. And in general, this is what we're now using because we're all used to using chat, either using audio or using text. I am aware that there are lots of folks now, indeed, including some contract shops where the whole vibe coding experience is sitting there with a foot switch and a microphone and talking to Cursor and generally hardly typing anything at all. But let's work on the basis we're talking about, kind of text chat as the primary interface. And that's quite beguiling in a way, because it kind of feels like we're pair programming, we're talking to another human. But in reality, it's nothing like talking to a human. It's not even like talking to a software developer. It's an abstract interface that we can do far more with, and in some ways far less with. And kind of what we're doing when we're AI assisted coding into a chat interface is that what we're really doing is providing a model with some context and some instructions that hopefully it's following. And then we're reviewing, providing feedback, and going back into that loop. So our feedback contributes to that context. And all the time, in theory, the output is improving, or it's becoming more stochastic. Who cares? Or rather, we care a great deal, but that's the kind of direction of travel.
Yeah.
And one of my rules for AI assisted coding is don't waste time coaching or coaxing. If it doesn't smell right, ask questions, reject, roll back, start again. And if it doesn't produce the right output, that's because your inputs, the context, and the input you're giving isn't right. So think that through, start again, at an early stage, really, in any AI assisted coding, if you possibly can. Now, obviously, after you're several levels deep down the rat hole, then that can be a little bit harder because you don't want to just roll back and refactor absolutely everything. But actually, that is a superpower with AI-based coding. Not only is it capable of producing output with more entropy, so it's producing potentially less accurate output, more random output, although models get better all the time, but it's also capable very, very quickly of producing that output. So if we don't like the direction of travel, it's kind of like a tenth or 100th as expensive to just say, what, we've learned from this process, let's throw it away and start again, but with better prompts.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my take really on the top level of the interface. It is like talking to a human, but it's totally unlike talking to a human in many, many ways. So don't think of it as too much like that. Agentic workflows are real. So the best tools now can read external documents. We can throw it at websites, open API specifications, MCP servers. It can plan, and forcing it to plan is super important because that's how we get the right kind of results out of it. It can search the repo and other projects. So in some of these tools, I'm going to go through a sort of a taxonomy of tools that are available in a second, but in many of them, the AI is very agentic in the workflow. It can dig into your repo. It can see what you're seeing on your screen, except it can see all of the other files that are sitting behind there as well. It can write code. It can run tests. It can iterate. But all of this only really works well when we've got clear constraints, tight feedback loops, and kind of human review to avoid that confident wrong. But it does look very much like magic, particularly, if you're the one coder left in the world who's not used AI code development tools yet, and just realizes quite how much of a superpower it can be, particularly for boilerplate rich workflows. It works best when you feed it hard realities. All of the prompting in the world can't make up for really good hard checkpoints and gatekeeping in that cycle. So it's really important that we have a plan, do, test, review, iterate loop. And it works best if there are real hard gatekeepers there. So as part of the planning process, we feed it with good authoritative API docs, excellent project documentation. So, rather than feeling around the file structure, we're effectively giving it markdown files to tell it where to find everything. And those markdown files are authoritative and they don't conflict with other documents. So any kind of random entropy or conflict within documentation within a project is kind of a gateway to hallucination. That's that kind of random entropy multiplied by the random entropy, which is kind of inherent in the LLM process, is kind of how the whole thing goes off the rails, and we end up with repos full of rubbish. So maintaining a repo which is consistent, has good authoritative API docs for both the internal and external interfaces, and good project documentation which is consistent with the truth of the project, is kind of like a starting point for success, really, in any AI-assisted coding project. The next part is very specific and detailed project goal descriptions. So, this is the prompt, this is the requirement we're feeding it, this is what we're telling it to do. Again, specificity in that, detailed project goal descriptions and detailed outputs are super important. Anything we don't add, the AI is going to make up. And we probably won't necessarily like what it's making up. Acceptance criteria, so that we are defining what we're gating the output on, what I want to see. And a big part of it is doing things inside a structure where hard thinko and typo gating language checks occur. So that's things like specifying an environment where we're using lint extensively, where we're using a type checked language. I've pretty much given up with using AI tools on plain JavaScript projects. Pre-AI coding tools, I used to write a lot in JavaScript, actually, because I used to find TypeScripts, excessive amounts of boilerplate, quite time consuming to write with. I've changed my opinion. I can write JavaScript, always have been able to, but often if I just want a really quick proof of concept, I just spew it out in JavaScript, or used to, because it's so much quicker than invoking all the boilerplate I need to invoke to define interfaces and things. For a proper engineered project, yes, of course, you use TypeScript and define your interfaces before you start your implementation. But now I exclusively write and think in TypeScript, because trying to use AI on a pure JavaScript project, it kind of multiplies by 10 some of the issues that occur, because there's hard type checking, and indeed the enforced kind of hygiene of going through defining interfaces and types just massively improve output, or rather kind of gates AI output on something useful. Gotcha. Regression tests with coverage. So again, as we build functionality up, decent regression tests with coverage mean that when we have an AI generate a new bit of functionality, we can have it, before it even throws it back for review, get it passing regression tests, so we're not breaking something that's already there. Yeah. And specifying lots of logging, debug logging, structured logging in structured formats, so that if we do then run code that gets produced, we help it find its own problems, because in the best tools, and we'll come on to that soon, the AI has first-class access to all the things that we can see. So it can see the code, it can see the Git history, and it can see the terminal output, so it can see the debug logging. All of these things, they were really important for coding humans. But good developers could save some initial time by taking shortcuts, particularly on small projects. That isn't really the case in AI-generated projects. They're absolutely essential. They're essential, but kind of not sufficient to avoid garbage AI code. Yeah. Let's have a look at some of the tools that are available. I'm sorry, I'm kind of rattling through this.
No, that's great.
Some questions in the chat that I'll come back to, but I'll do a quick look at that in a second. But kind of some of the tools out there. Claude Code is great. It's terminal orientated and very good quality AI. I think Anthropic often lead, and certainly historically have led on code understanding, but it's primarily a text-based loop workflow. So it's quite a high-level interface in a terminal interface. As a coder, if you're coming to it, it kind of forces you to abstract yourself a little bit. So I'm not going to use it on this intro session, although I quite like it. OpenAI Codex, again, very similar thing. Strong on planning and deep thinking coding tasks, where it will think in quite an abstract way about things we're asking it to do. It's integrated with GitHub Copilot, but it's not really an IDE as such. Gemini Code Assist, similarly, quite similar. It integrates via IDE plugins, and it's very, very good for Google integrations. So, all those things kind of have a token cost, and they've got varying qualities. And in one cycle, Anthropic will be better. In the next cycle, OpenAI's Codex will be better. The tool we're going to use is a tool called Cursor. I like it because it's an AI native code editor. So if you're coming at AI coding, particularly from a background of something like VS Code, then it is VS Code. Basically, it's a fork of VS Code, but with AI as a first-class citizen. So I talked about the AI being able to see all the panes of glass, all the panels that you can see. This, for me, really is one of the USPs of Cursor, that it can see my whole environment and I can see its whole environment. So I can go back to manual coding. It's particularly good for code reviews because I can see that kind of Git diff history. And just that context integration is really there. There's another very similar tool called Windsurf. In many ways, very similar to Cursor. I find it a little bit less of a pro user API, or pro user UI rather. But it's got slightly more interesting, lower cost price points. If you're an individual user, it's kind of got an always free that isn't terribly limited on tokens.
Okay.
So it can be kind of a good entry point, really.
Yeah, because we had a
So there,
question just from the audience. What happens if I don't have a paid for API?
Windsurf and Cursor both have free tiers,
Gotcha.
so you can go and use those. And
Perfect.
obviously the nature of the beast with this stuff is that someone is paying for GPU time to run those tokens. So
Yeah.
the stuff that you can do in the free layer, it'll get you somewhere to seeing the possibilities. But as soon as you start generating non-trivial stuff, it'll kind of hold out its paywall for you to pay some money to be able to carry on.
Yeah.
And that's one of the disadvantages of these tools. They are a force multiplier. They are a superpower, but they do cost real money. It's
Yeah.
very, very, the Cursor $20 a month plan runs out of steam pretty quickly once you start relying on it fairly heavily. Then you're onto the $200 a month plan. And if you're really, really knocking out code with this stuff, then you're onto usage-based charging. And it's not impossible to run up Cursor token bills in the $1,000 a month range.
Yeah.
But then again, if you're getting $1,000 worth of programmer output for that, if you're using it really well, then that can be quite a cost saving over hiring, kind of several developers to work with you. But
Exactly.
that only works if if the pattern you're developing is an effective one. If you're operating ineffectively, you will probably burn at least as many tokens, if not more, and then you're paying money for something that's not generating a ton of value to
Yeah.
you.
That's so we don't have free credits. We're not sponsored by any of the above mentioned companies that are providing these tools. However, there is
Yeah,
entry
Cursor, if
level.
you're listening, robertpickering.org, send them to me and I'll have. I doubt it works like that. Yeah, so a really key important, I'm sorry I banged on about this, but context is the all important thing, really.
Yeah.
The AI needs access to your repo, terminal output, running tests and understanding done in order to do those really tight iteration loops. I'm not going to bang on about this because I think the obvious thing to do now is to actually go and do a practical example.
Yay.
Practical example I want to do is a little project I've been meaning to do for ages. And this really is a from scratch. I've not done this before. It's something that I need to do. And it's just a voice agent eval scenario. So what I want to do is create an agent, calls another telephone agent, and interacts with it to do QA. So the idea is I can run this on a cron job, or I can, use it as part of an eval. So just thinking things through, we need a clear spec, a published API, and some tests. So with that in mind, I have a sort of a cursor project that I have started over here. So let's find that. Here we go. And literally all I've done here is done a git init, generated a kind of a package. Well, actually, I had Cursor generate me a package.json. I handed it my standard agent config. Actually, I will publish this repo when we're done, because I'm very happy indeed for you to steal these. So
Perfect.
this is a typical agent config that kind of instantiates a load of those rules I talked about having ESLint and doing error checking. And that's all we've done so far. So we've just got a completely empty repo. I've created a .m file that has a bunch of API keys, and I'm not going to click on that because I don't want to expose those to the world.
Yep.
And what I need to do now is just generate a project, really. So we better give Cursor something to do. And first thing I'm going to tell it is give it a bit of a project definition. And I did literally, while we were sitting in the waiting room, start typing something in as an initial spec for the project. This probably isn't as good as I should have thought about, but we'll paste that into my box here. So all I'm literally saying, I've got a project here. The API definition you need can be found at this place. It's the Applet API for generating voice agents. And I'm telling it there's a .env in the project folder, but my Cursor config doesn't let it read .envs. And that's an important thing about a lot of these AI tools. You never give them access to any confidential data that you hold. You have very little control over what it will do with that information. And the very best way of controlling sensitive data is just never give it to the AI. So I have my .env in my exclude. So I can tell the AI that it's there, and I can tell it what's in there, and I have to tell it what's in there because it won't otherwise know. And then I tell it what we want to do. We want to write a system in Node.js and TypeScript, which creates two telephone agents, one inbound, one outbound. I'm going to tell it a little bit about how to create it, but I've given it the URL for the spec definition there. And I'm going to ask it to plan what it wants to do to generate that project for me. So let's fire that off and see what it comes up with. Is this screen level kind of readable for folks? I'm just a little bit.
It's a bit small, unfortunately.
Okay, let's do something to kind of increase that a bit. How's that?
Oh yeah, that's better. That's
Okay.
readable.
So because I've asked it to do that planning piece,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a really good tip here, ask it to do a planning piece, which will have it think about it and validate the assumptions. So it's telling me the high level approach, and it's playing back that it's basically read my instructions.
Gotcha.
And it hasn't at this point gone and parsed those API docs. Oh yeah, it has. It has. It's telling me it could be something like, and the execution orchestration creates agent A inbound, creates agent B outbound. That's exactly what I was asking it to do. Starts an outbound call from agent B to agent A's 028 number. Option logs runners IDs and call results. Okay, and it's saying it's got some clarifications and questions for me. Auth and base URL. Is the test server directly exactly the base URL, or should it be the full /API? Okay. Okay.
Gotcha.
I think it is. It's from memory, actually. It's kind of horrible when you're having to having me my API and I'm going and reading the JSON doc without giving it. This is being quite sloppy and lazy, actually. I'm not impressed with that. And this is one of the stochastic things about APIs. Because I asked it to plan and confirm, it is making me do all the darned work.
Yep.
That's fine. 2. Yeah, do your own work. Call on 3. 4. Actually, let's do something that I'm much keener on, which is to use an audio interface. So 4 : don't care whether it's literal or not. It's just that agent A needs to understand agent B.
Okay.
And then 5, just small integer, just a simple mathematical task, because LLMs often get this wrong. So I just want to test that agent A understands a small task that agent B sets for it. Six, definitely want a properly structured project. So do this as you would a project that's going to be heavily maintained. So I want proper modularization. The API client, agents, and main are all sitting in completely separate directories because we will want to build on this. Can you get the rest of the answers that you need from the API spec and come back if you've got any questions? So we'll fire that back.
Cool.
Important thing is that you'll notice it's asking me about commands that it wants to execute, and I've got this use allow list here. There are lots of apocryphal stories out there of folks that add stuff to the allow list. The AI hallucinates and then does a rm minus rf ... star or whatever.
Yeah.
And I tend to like to operate things in a mode where I am, it's prompting me to say, do you want to let me do this or not? And take a
Gotcha.
look.
Yeah. But as you say, Ian, the base understanding is critical when you're using these tools. It's a superpower, but you do need that base understanding.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting in a way because clearly the quality of the input defines the quality of the output. And for a project that's got good API docs, a good succinct definition of what you want is important.
Yeah.
Probably if I'd had more time to do this, I would have sat down and gone through a formal kind of project generation process where I wrote an entire sort of markdown doc about what I was looking for. Because I was sort of casting around in the half hour before I jumped on this call and thought, what shall I do as a nice anonymous project for this demo? I kind of ended up writing something that was just a few paragraphs, but.
Yep.
Okay, so it's now asking me some questions. So it still needs from the API spec.
Mhm. Yep, the session's recorded, so you'll be able to go through this, Esther. And it's really good. Rob has expanded it so we can read what he's typing. Also, what he put, I know for many junior devs would be, it's obvious. Well, it's not to me. But when it's an AI, you don't need to worry about that. Yeah. So it'll all be on the main TADhack page. So it's VCONIC TADHack. There's this one URL. If you receive anything from me, it'll have that URL in it. So all these sessions will be in there.
What we're doing now is just going on the loop. It was claiming not to be able to find the API spec, which
Oh,
was a
okay.
little bit strange. So everything it's done so far, it's kind of done from hearsay. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe I typoed the URL there. Here we go. That's much better.
So it didn't read the file that you gave it, or?
No, I think it's even worse. I think this is human error. So
Okay,
the
gotcha.
human gave the AI the wrong URL for the API spec, and
Understood.
rather than saying, you fool, you gave me the wrong URL. I mean, this is one of the issues. Is um, the some of the models are kind of like that polite scared intern
Yep.
who sort of wants to please you and wants to make the data fit. So if you say use this URL, it won't say Rob, you idiot, the URL you gave me doesn't point to anything useful. It will just kind of say, well, I couldn't quite fetch that URL, so I thought I would make it up myself.
Yep. That's funny.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And this makes it all the more real world, the demo, because we all make those silly little errors.
I'm just now reading, just because I mean, generally when I'm sitting coding something like this, I would read through in detail what
Yeah,
what it says it's going to scaffold out, and I'm reasonably happy with this.
cool.
Fantastic! It's put some logging in. Yeah, knows it needs to use .env in order to read my .env. It's It's going for a default info log level, which is great. Just while it's been busy there, let's have a look at what it's actually scaffolding out as it goes along. So yeah, a beautiful TypeScript. It's exporting all of its interfaces first.
Yeah.
You'll notice that we get this this keep review line on the bottom of here. So what it's basically saying there, and the flow that we should use, the flow that I would use if I were using this in a proper engineering context, is just to go through every single file, review it, and say, yeah, I accept what you've done there. I accept what you've done there.
Gotcha.
We're not going to do that just yet because I am going to take its advice. Make a bit more space. So this is just a yarn installing a load of package dependencies, and if it's got all of its dependencies right, then the install should happen. Okay, fantastic. So it's saying run yarn dev, which is effectively running the server in debug mode. Oh, that's not good, is it? So let's tell it it's messed up.
So how did it mess up?
I can't be bothered to go and find out. I mean, it kind of looks like it's basically doing 2 imports of Logger.
Oh, gotcha.
And I'll let it figure it out. One of the nice things is I'm doing a demo of Cursor fixing its problems. So let's let Cursor fix its problems.
Yeah.
I'm the human. I did the high level stuff. It can figure that out. Okay, yeah, you're right. That error is on me. I love some of the human. I didn't run yarn dev, and I'm still not going to do it. So over to you. It is kind of interesting, actually. I've just upgraded Cursor, and there's kind of a bit of an arms race on some of this stuff that actually getting the thing to do the work can sometimes lead a little bit more nuance in your agent configuration. And I do end up tweaking to kind of get it doing the whole workflow. So it doesn't help, but I sometimes find myself getting a little rude at this point where I'm asking it to iterate. So
Yeah.
When when our AI overlords take over, I shall probably be the first in front of a firing squad. Okay. Da 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 da. Plain JSON logs from Pinot, no pretty print transport. I'd like pretty print, please. Okay, so our code is running now, and it's making an attempt to start the agent, but it's getting an HTTP error. So let's give it that HTTP error and say code. Doing everything possible I can at this stage to keep the AI on point, fixing its own errors.
Yeah.
This is actually the point where kind of Rob the developer would go off and try and figure out exactly what it's doing wrong, because we're sort of at that point where it feels intuitively that we may be going down a rat hole.
Mhm.
So fixes update your M so test server includes API. I think that's wrong.
Mhm.
And there's some lovely typos in there, so let's see if it makes any sense of them. It will. Absolutely
Oh
will.
yeah.
Excuse my terrible typing.
But again, this is just a beautiful real world demo.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Because my experimentation, I've never been as brave to do some of the stuff that you're doing.
Right, let's
It's
have a
cool.
look what it's telling us the issue is now. So it still thinks it's got a bad request. And the base URL is that. Didn't actually include the log.
Okay. This is a great example of just play with the tool. You build that confidence in how to basically just where to push it, checking the errors. I mean, this is just great.
Okay. Right. So fantastic. It has read the API doc, and the API doc has told it what it needs to do, but it's making an inappropriate choice of agent. So I just
Oh,
need to give it a bit more info there.
okay.
I'll let it finish. Yeah, so this is as a brilliant example of if stuff isn't in the documentation, the AI can't find it. So that was a piece of information that was inside Rob's head,
Yeah.
not inside the documentation, because it described things that are available in the API. It didn't describe the config of the server and what phone numbers are available where.
Yeah.
Just to really, really be horrible, I've given it a typo on the model that will work or not. So let's see if it figures that out. Didn't actually do that intentionally. That was just random stochastic typing. Okay. So interesting thing about this is that it's adding logging, and it's using the logging to figure out what it did wrong.
Yeah.
We've probably reached a point, actually, if I go and have a look at the setup agents, where we are probably creating setup agents.ts, and I presumably in workflow. There we go. If I go and look at that code, it is probably a mess now of. Yeah, so an interesting thing that this is a fairly typical kind of AI generator. It's not failure mode, but what it's doing is piling more and more and more code into here to
Yeah.
try and figure out what's going on. So it's special casing stuff that I've told it. and casting that into code. I wouldn't do this as a developer,
Yeah.
but there we go.
He did. No worries. We'll have it all recorded to be able to watch what happened while you after you left.
I just realised the time actually, Alan.
I
Um,
know it's okay. Don't worry. This has been an amazing
enjoying yourself.
demo. Because you're just prepared to do stuff that I'm just like,
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's found the exact issue here,
yeah,
that it's trying to use a TTS voice that isn't available on the model. So that's fantastic. Okay, do that. So this is real human helping the AI or human assisted AI coding.
yeah. I happen to know.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that's going on here, you'll notice the slowdown as I um, as we're sort of typing this prompt. And one of the things that I should be doing here that would be much better practice is I should have moved into a new chat context here.
Okay,
Because we've got all of that design work that it did sitting in the context,
understood.
and we're asking it to debug something now, and that's going to give us a big chunk of context each time, which we don't really want. So what I should really have done is at the point, we'd identified a specific issue here,
Mhm.
moved into a new context to resolve
Okay,
it.
gotcha. Okay. So you remove the configuration.
Didn't include the. So I'm going to let the AI have the final answer, having. Okay. It's actually given me a very succinct description of a misconfiguration on the back end that's preventing it
Oh,
um, from making the call. So, I mean, it would probably have taken me 10 minutes of looking through that error log to figure out what the issue is there. And I can go back to this and fix it up. So, not a phenomenal success in terms of a demo of Cursor doing a complete end-to-end generator and application session, but I can see what I need to go and look at on the back-end server that this is connecting
cool.
to make this work, which is kind of superb. And we've got here an entire repo constructed for really quite a complicated job that we want it to do,
Yes.
and describing the whole scenario in what almost exactly an hour. So I kind of hope that's been helpful as a 10,000-foot view of AI originated coding.
Absolutely. But also the
Shame we weren't
bravery and the
100%
tenacity.
successful. Yeah,
You were
absolutely.
doing
I mean,
stuff
that's the
that,
way you've got to set off with some of this stuff.
yes,
You kind of have to persist in order to make your own understanding of the process better.
yeah. Oh, if
And
you take your
that's how
screen
you
share off
generate.
because we can't see you. I'm just seeing Rob
Oh,
Pickering.
I'm sorry. I thought I already
Oh,
had actually.
hang on.
Let me da, 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 da. Let's cancel that. No.
Oh,
Oh, start video.
oh. Oh, there you
How's that?
go.
Yeah.
Yay. Perfect. Hey,
Yeah, in terms of the process, the tenacity of driving the whole thing from prompts rather than
yeah,
diving in and fixing it. I'm not sure you always get a payback on that.
no,
Sometimes, if you really understand the code, diving in can be a useful thing to do. But just in terms of the sheer size of boilerplate
yeah,
that you can confidently produce quickly and getting a leg up, even just starting a project like this and scaffolding it out would take me an hour.
yes,
So I've got a
absolutely.
scaffold which is working here, and found a back-end configuration problem because I hadn't put the right phone numbers in the right place.
Gotcha.
But
Hey,
interesting exercise to go through.
that's it. And we'll share the files once I get everything published. Yeah.
Super. All right. Thanks very
Excellent,
much,
Rob. No, this was
Alan.
great. Again, I learned so much from this. It's, you know how it is, you learn from failures. If it was just all like success, this is how you do it, boom, great, we're done. So it was just great to see how you felt found with the tool. I mean, it was just great to see. So again, thank you so much. And I'll get this all published in hopefully later today or tomorrow. Okay,
Fantastic. Thanks, Alan.
you're
Bye,
welcome. Bye
folks.
bye.